What I want to share with you is my recollection of what Abuelita taught me to do in making one of the famous dishes that she made regularly called Picadillo. It's made with ground beef and olives and raisins and capers. Really a Spanish kind of dish that balances the salty, the sweet with the savory. And I think you'll enjoy it. Most people do. It's served over rice with sweet plantains and Cuban bread if you can find it. So let's get to making picadillo. The first step is to brown some ground beef, and I'm not very good at measuring, as I've told you before. 3 hamburger patties, I don't know, they're pretty thick, maybe about a pound of burger, and this is 80-20, 80-20. I've tried using 90-10. I have heard of people even using ground turkey. I find that just plain old beef, 80-20 beef, seems to work out best. Now I'll get that on the stove and start it browning while we're prepping the rest of the ingredients. I want to make sure this is nice and brown. There's not a lot of garlic in this dish, some, and you can use garlic powder if you don't have any fresh garlic available. I tend to like fresh garlic when I have it and I have time. You get pretty good results with garlic powder, however. And I'll go ahead and add that to the hamburger right after I drain some of the fat off. You can see that the hamburger is browned pretty well. A lot of fat has come off that burger, so instead of straining it, I'm going to use an old trick by simply adding some paper towels to the beef and letting the paper towels become sponges to remove some excess fat. There's one. I'll put in a few more. This method is pretty good, pretty effective. Kind of stirring paper towel into the beef, and it's removing a lot of the excess fat. Now we can add the minced garlic, a couple of garlic toes. Onion, diced. Nothing fancy about how I do this. It's going to cook for quite a while, so it'll all break down. And you can use a regular bell pepper. Abuelita always used green bell pepper. I tend to like orange or yellow bell peppers. They're not quite as bitter. And these are actually a product labeled as Little Sweeties. They're not the least bit spicy. They tend to be sweet and not bitter. And so I'll just get those minced, and I'll get those into the pot. You can see that I've incorporated the diced onion and bell pepper into the drained hamburger. Next step will be to add some olive oil, actually. I don't know, about a half a cup, not quite sure. As you know, I don't measure very well, and neither did Abuelita, actually. Increase the heat. I turn the heat back down to low. I'm increasing it a little bit now, stirring in a little bit of that olive oil. Apologize for the camera work. It's hard to cook with one hand and video with the other. Guess the crew took the day off. Be really neat if I could ever get with Chad and have his professional abilities applied to some of this good old-fashioned Cuban cooking. Next we add capers. It's a small jar of capers. I've already drained them. And olives. Now, usually I use really inexpensive olives. Sometimes they're labeled as salad olives. These are fancier than usual. They are pitted, and I'm going to dice some of the olives, add the capers, and then we'll move next to raisins. Abuelita never used golden raisins. I prefer the golden raisins. I think they're a little sweeter than the regular raisins, but raisins are raisins, and they'll help balance the savory, salty, sour flavors with a bit of sweet. Really important in this dish to balance the flavors. A few capers won't leave the jar. I'll scrape them out in just a little bit. And let's get to some dicing of some olives. Certainly nothing fancy here. I just grabbed some olives. Guess I should use a slotted spoon, but hey, it's all family. And just quickly run a knife through. Break them up a little bit. If you use the pimento stuffed olives, you get a little extra treat. I think the pimentos are good. I got these olives because we're going to make a salad later this week, which requires this particular type of olive. And it's an experimental salad. We'll see how it goes. But these should work fine for picadillo. There we go. I don't know, how much is that? A cup? Again, not great with measuring. Go ahead and add those. Next, let's go over and add the raisins. Again, estimating, I'd say, I like it on the sweet side. So did Grandpa. Or does Grandpa actually. So I'm adding some extra raisins. Probably a little less than a cup. We can always add more of any of this as we go. Okay, the raisins are in, or at least some of the raisins are in, and now let's stir. Incorporate the onions, the garlic, the bell pepper, the capers. A little more fire under the pot. Bring it back up to heat. Now that's looking pretty good. Still another important ingredient, and that is tomato sauce. You could use tomato paste and water it down. I use tomato sauce, and I'm adding, at this point, one 15-ounce can. That may be more than I really need, but it'll cook down and become a little sweeter as the cook time goes on. There we go. Picadillo is a fascinating dish because normally it's served over rice with sweet plantains and Cuban bread, maybe a salad. Avocado salad goes great with it. But you can also use picadillo, even leftover picadillo, to stuff chunks of Cuban bread. It's called a mollete, a stuffed chunk of Cuban bread that's stuffed with picadillo, and then it is rolled in egg, cracker meal, and fried, pan fried in an inch or two of oil. That's a nice crunchy, delicious sandwich. And you can also do the same with a potato, make a papa rellena, which is a stuffed potato. I always took a ball of mashed potatoes, Um, created a concavity in it, filled it with picadillo, close it up, roll it in egg, cracker meal, fry it, and you've got a great stuffed potato, papa rellena. All done with picadillo. Picadillo has a life of its own. After you have it after the main dish, you then just go ahead and use the leftovers in rather creative ways. An American style of eating picadillo is just making a cold picadillo sandwich, 2 pieces of red picadillo, and some mustard. Mustard makes a great sandwich using a little mustard. Something I think Abuelita probably never thought of, but would certainly fall in line with a cold meatloaf sandwich, so to speak, except very, very flavorful. I added some water, maybe 1/4 cup, just to help disperse the seasonings and get the right consistency. It's going to cook for a bit, at least an hour. And now I'm going to add another ingredient, just a very small amount, just I don't know, a couple of tablespoons of vinegar. Not much. Again, it's a question of balancing, trying to balance the sweet and the savory elements, sour elements. Might add a little bit more water to this. And then I'll cover and let cook. I'm going to let it cook for at least an hour, and I'll stir every, 10, 15 minutes. Now here's something important I almost neglected to put in. A couple of bay leaves, whole bay leaves, standard variety. Do not use California bay leaves. They don't taste the same. And about a teaspoon to a half teaspoon of cumin seed or ground comino, ground cumin seed. Stir both items in and then just let the picadillo simmer away. Now, while the picadillo is cooking, I go ahead and get ready to make the fried plantains. Now, I do use regular fresh plantains, but this is an easy shortcut. Always have it in the freezer, and they taste pretty good. So I'll serve rice, plain old white rice, plantains, plátano maduro, ripe plantains, and a salad. Salad will be a tossed green salad, some onion, dressed with olive oil and vinegar, or a nice avocado salad. Always Cuban bread or French bread or an Italian bread, if we can find it. And here's my plate of picadillo, rice, sweet plantains, and Cuban bread. Quite typical. I think Abuelita probably served this once a week. Just seemed that way. And the leftovers make great stuffed potatoes, papa rellena, molletes, stuffed Cuban bread, or even served cold on a sandwich with some mustard. Terrific meal.